Okay, let's dive into the Houston Texans and their quarterback. And listen, the fun part about any draft, beside maybe there's one or two players a draft that it's just like legitimately impossible for them not to be decent, right? Like Julio Jones or Miles Garrett or Vaughn Miller. Like, even if they don't live up to the hype, they are going to play in the league for a decade plus. Clowney, Ndamukong Suh, neither one of those guys, I would say, lived up to the billing and still went on to have a decade plus career. Sue, who I went to a dinner with a guy on Friday that said they saw him at the mall in Arizona, I mean, is still trying to play. Obviously, Jadeveon Clowney still going. Like, there are some guys, no one is guaranteed to go to the Hall of Fame, but some guys' floor is so freaking high that it's impossible for them to quote unquote be a bust or not just a solid starter for a long time. The overwhelming majority of players are risky. There is no guarantee, and especially quarterbacks. So no matter how good you are in college, no matter how much we all love watching you, there is a huge element of risk at that position. If you watch C.J. Stroud over this couple years at Ohio State, it was stupid how effortlessly it was for him to throw the ball. How beautiful the ball looked in the air. Now it was easy to be like, well, look who he's throwing to. It's so easy. Their team's so much better. You could argue either side. And then that Georgia game happened. You're like, God, I've never seen him look like that. And I would say I went back and I watched a decent amount of that game yesterday. But I don't blame you if you weren't dialed into Texans Tampa. And then I went today and I watched every one of his throws. And I think a huge area that separates quarterbacks from being good players and basically busts, guys that are drafted high that can't be long-term starters, is the ability to layer throws. Most guys can throw a go route. Most guys can be accurate on an out route. Most guys on a quick, wheel route or an option route, they can hit those the majority of the time. It's can they layer throws between different types of zone defenses and just different defensive concepts where there's a linebacker, your receiver, and then another defensive back. And you have to do that time and time again to win games in the NFL. And a lot of guys can never do that or are never accurate doing that. They can attempt to do that. They throw picks, they overthrow it. They just can't consistently hit that pass. That's what all the great and long-term starting quarterbacks can do pretty consistently. Layer touch passes with accuracy. And that's one thing C.J. Stroud does currently with his eyes closed. I would say his arm is good, not great. His athleticism is definitely better than we once thought going back to the Georgia game. He can move. I wouldn't call him some crazy athlete, but athleticism is something that if he does have to leave the pocket, he can keep plays alive. He did that several times. And he's kind of an instinctive playmaker. But inside the pocket, one of his comps was Jared Goff. And people forget like that for a while, that was like a negative thing. Jared Goff was the number one overall pick, had a ton of success in LA, and is now kicking ass and taking names for the Detroit Lions. What Jared Goff does not possess, like his athleticism for NFL standards, between 0 and 10 is close to a 0. It's like, I'd put it like a 1 or a 2. If Lamar and Kyler and guys like that are like 9s, 10s, CJ is probably somewhere in the middle, but he definitely is much more confident moving around and throwing. It's not something that he wants to rely on. So to me, his ceiling relative to Jared Goff, who you can tell when it's built well around him is pretty damn good, is higher. And listen, I can't pretend I liked Bryce Young more. It's pretty clear, like, based on the evidence we have, there is not a soul in the NFL, and that includes Carolina, that wouldn't take C.J. Stroud over Bryce Young. Now, at quarterback, a lot, you're dependent on your offensive coordinator, your skill guys. A lot of stuff is out of your control. But if you just watch CJ and you watch Bryce, it doesn't really look like they're comparable right now as talents. Obviously, there's a lot of unknown with Anthony Richardson, but his skill set and physical attributes are the best of the group. And Will Levis has a really good arm as well. But CJ is just a natural passer, is something that clearly translates from college, and the accuracy on those layered throws. And then you never know with the poise. And that's something I think sometimes in college, when your team is so much better, how are you going to react when you don't have the protection and you're getting peppered by NFL guys? making 10, 20, 25 million dollars. And he shows a lot of that. So to me, the accuracy, the touch passes on the layered throws and the poise, because his stats are pretty stupid right now. And I would say it feels like he's a runaway train based on the way things are going for Rookie of the Year. He's got 14 touchdowns, 1 interception so far in the season. Obviously had a historic day against Tampa, but if I'm a Texans fan, like my coach, I'd buy all the stock in D'Amico, and I would have before he even accepted a head coaching job. He was destined to be a stud head coach, just like Mike Vrabel once upon a time. But for those guys to be good and win, you need competent quarterback play, right? And listen, we can say what we want about Ryan Tannehill, but for a couple year stretch, he kind of became an Alex Smith version. And if you're a really good coach and I give you Alex Smith, like you're going to the playoffs. Vrabel was rattling off playoff wins and appearances. And for D'Amico to be a good head coach, he needs a competent quarterback. And it sure looks like he got one on a rookie contract. So I would be very, very excited. Who knows? Like, are you going to make the playoffs? I think Jacksonville's going to win that division. Could you make a wild card? It's hard because of the AFC. But I would say the sun is shining pretty bright right now in the Houston Texans.